Since their relegation down to League One and their promotion back up to the Premier League over 10 years ago, Southampton have been steadily improving with a clever recruitment strategy and wonderful youth development process. But having seen a lot of their top talent poached by bigger clubs, they've started to see a slow decline in performances and now find themselves bottom of the table this season with multiple managerial changes. And today it's time for another, as Adrian DG is about to take over the reins at the South Coast club with a very simple objective: staving off relegation and bringing silverware back to the St Mary's Stadium as we embark on a brand new FIFA 23 Southampton career mode. And looking at the squad, it's not hard to see why the team is struggling so much. With only one player in James Ward-Prowse rated in the 80s, we've got a lot of work to do if we want to start pulling this Southampton club back up the table. Now, to be fair to the club, they've actually got some really good young players in the squad, starting with the likes of poached in defence. The 19-year-old German only signed for the club in the summer, but with numerous first-team appearances for Bochum in the Bundesliga, he's got the perfect blend of match experience with huge potential. And Mohamed Salazou is another at 23 years old, 6'3", and with over 65 Premier League appearances for the club, he's another player that fits the profile of experience and potential. I've got a feeling that him and poached are going to form the foundation of our defence for the foreseeable future. Tino Livramento is next on the list. The young fullback whom Southampton managed to snap up on the cheek from Chelsea last season has all the tools to be a success for the club long term. He's quick, agile, attack-minded, and whilst a horrendous ACL injury has kept him out for quite a long time, I've got a feeling he's going to develop into a pivotal player for us in this career mode. And finally, we've got Romeo Lavia, the youngest and lowest rated player on this list, but arguably the one with the biggest potential. The central defensive midfielder has great work rate, good stats across the board, and certainly has the potential to be something special. I'm not quite sure he's ready to feature for the first team this season, so he's on the loan list for now, but he's certainly one to keep your eye on. Southampton have also made some good signings in January of this season in a bid to stave off relegation. They've gone for a blend of youth and experience, especially in attacking areas with the likes of Alcaraz, Onuachu, Sulemana and Orsic. But for now, it's up to Adrian DG to try and see if we can get a tune out of all of them. And with the signings of Sulemana and Orsic on the left-hand side, it means we've got enough cover in that area of the pitch. So with that in mind, and bearing in mind they've also got a higher rating than him, I've decided to retrain Gineppo from a left midfielder into a cam. He's got all the attributes to do the role, and he's able to convert to it in the quickest time of all my players. So for now, it seems like a no-brainer. However, without doubt, the most important player in this team is our captain, our leader, and the only man in the squad to have an 80+ rating. And of course, I'm talking about James Ward-Prowse. Too much has been said about this man's ability from dead ball situations, and I can't help but feel that we're going to be relying on that ability across the course of the season. He's got enough time left on his contract for now, but we have to make sure we do everything we can to keep hold of him, make him happy, to stave off interest from any other clubs. For now though, it's time to turn our attentions to some transfers, and as you can see, we have a plethora of players that we need to start thinking about moving on before we can start thinking about bringing anyone else into the club, starting off with this man, Theo Walcott. Perhaps he could be considered as a Southampton icon, bursting onto the scene and into the England squad at the age of 16 despite only playing a handful of games in the Championship. And although he's made over 200 appearances for Arsenal and 47 appearances for England, it could be argued that he's not quite fulfilled that early potential. And now at 33 years of age, I think it's time for him to move on to the next phase of his career. And a bid of £1 million later from Salernitana, it looks like he may well be finishing his career in Italy. We've then got a slew of other transfers following him out the Southampton revolving door, starting with Mohamed El Younoussi off to Aston Villa for just over £5 million. I would have preferred for him not to have gone to a Premier League rival, but unfortunately there were no other teams coming in for him. And with Onuachu joining the club in the latest January transfer window, it was a fight between Che Adams and Adam Armstrong to secure that backup striker role. And with Troyes coming in with a £4.9 million offer from Armstrong, it looks like Che Adams has won that battle. His namesake Stuart Armstrong has also left the club as he departs for Spain, more specifically Atletico Bilbao, for £5.3 million. And with the two youngsters in defence who I mentioned earlier on in the episode, there's no room for Brazilian centre-back Ianco. He also jets across to Spain in a deal worth £4 million to Getafe. And finally, my backup goalkeeper Alex McCarthy, whose contract was up at the end of the season anyway, departs for a new life in Turkey for a £1.8 million deal to Fenerbahce. And so with all of those departures, that has left us with a fairly chunky amount of money to spend, and the first position we've identified is at left back. Now, Southampton have a history of buying players from Scottish clubs, with the likes of Van Dijk, Wanyama and the recently departed Stuart Armstrong to name a few, and we're going to continue that trend today with Rangers left back Ridvan Yilmaz. The young, attacking-minded fullback is known for his athleticism and ability to get up and down the pitch. At 73 rated, with good technical and defensive stats, at 21 years old, I think he's going to be a fantastic addition to the club, and one that I think Southampton in real life would be very happy to make. And £7.8 million later, we have our very first signing of this career mode. But we are not stopping there, as it's now time to move on to summer signing number 2. Now, I've mentioned with some of the Southampton players we've brought in January, January in real life, we now have a plethora of options on the left-hand side in midfield. However, the same can't be said for the right, and that is where this man, Jeremy Doku, comes into play. The young Belgian, who was recently called up to the Belgian national squad for the Qatar World Cup, is known for his speed, technical ability and direct style of play. An explosive and dynamic winger, is considered one of the brightest prospects in European football, and with Southampton being known for their ability to develop youth talent, there is arguably no better place for this man to go to help continue his development and finally get a taste of Premier League football. Being able to snap him up for just 13.2 mil could well turn out to be the bargain of the summer for the 75 rated 20-year-old, and just like Yilmaz and some of our other young players, I've got real high hopes that he can develop into something special as his career mode progresses. Now, I've mentioned Southampton's reputation for bringing through young players, so that of course means that we have to take a look over the prospects in the youth academy, and whilst you can see we do have a good list of players, the one I've really got my eye on is the Spanish goalkeeper Ruben Varela. And whilst I'm not quite sure he's ready for the senior team yet, with a potential rating of 88, and with the 40-year-old Willy Caballero retiring at the end of the season, Varela could well be the man to replace him in the squad when he hangs up his boots. And speaking of the youth academy, we've obviously got to continue to try and keep that conveyor belt of talent coming through at the club, and that is why I'm sending my youth scouts out to Ireland, England and Scotland to try and cast their eye over the next generation of players across the UK and Ireland. And it is so important that I do that, as it's no surprise to see the board placing youth development as the highest priority at the club, as they are desperate to see young players come through the ranks. However, that is not just so they can see the best British talent ply their trade in a Southampton jersey, but also so they can try and sell those youth players off for a profit in future seasons, as they want me to make at least £10.3 million profit in youth transfers. Nice to see the board have got their priorities right. Elsewhere, a mid-table finish and a run in the FA Cup to the round of 16 seems achievable as our domestic objectives, and really should be the minimum we look to achieve this season. So with our transfers sorted for now and the youth scouting up and running, it's time to take a look at how the squad is shaping up for the start of the season. And as you can see, I'm sticking to the 4-2-3-1 formation that Southampton have lined up with originally. We're playing with a relatively high defensive line, utilising James Ward-Prowse's technical ability to implement a fast build-up play with lots of forward runs. With our new pacey wingers, it's imperative that we play wide, get crosses in and try and pile as many players into the box as we can. And speaking of James Ward-Prowse, it'll of course come as no surprise to see that man on every single set piece he can get his hands on. For now though, it's time to crack on with the football in the opening game of the season as we entertain Wolves at the St Mary's Stadium. The fans are filled with excitement to see how this new era is going to kick off, and both new signings Yilmaz and Jeremy Doku will be making their debuts for the club. However, the fans had to wait to the 25th minute for their first piece of entertainment as Orsic burst into the Wolves half, steaming through the centre of the park with no Wolves players putting a challenge in. He had the time to pick out a shot from distance that unfortunately the goalkeeper was equal to, and it was new signing Doku who had the best chance of the game though. 5 minutes later, after some great work from Aribo, gave him the ball in the box, but he can only drag his shot wide, much to Adrian DG's disbelief. It was Doku who was involved yet again though before half time, laying the ball off to Kyle Walker-Peters, but a really tame shot from him went sailing high and wide. And we kicked off the second half just as we ended the first on the front foot, with Alcaraz this time having the chance to give us a lead, but once again my players just didn't have their shooting boots on and he blazed his strike well over the bar. Jeremy Doku turned into a man on a mission just a few minutes later, driving into the heart of the Wolves midfield and defence, bursting past numerous players just like he was signed to do. A wicked strike from him just inside the edge of the area forced the keeper into another big save. However, the resulting corner was the opportunity for leader James Ward-Prowse to step up and change the game with a wicked delivery he's known for, and my word did he just do that. A fine ball into the box met by the head of Onyenachu, and we finally found ourselves a deserved 1-0 up through a set piece routine that I'm sure we'll see plenty of as this career mode progresses. We went in search of another just a few minutes later, and it was my two signings combining. Yilmaz driving down the left hand side, lifting a wonderful ball into the box, and Doku met it with a ridiculous attempt of a volley that just went off target. What a debut goal that could have been. However, with just over 20 minutes left in the game, things started to go a little pear-shaped. A beautiful ball through from Kuna into Sarabia, and the former PSG man made no mistake from inside the box, powering into the left-hand corner and levelling the scores to 1-1. James Ward-Prowse forced the keeper into a great save only a few minutes later, but from dominating the first hour of the game, we threw it all away with only minutes remaining. A great work down the left-hand side from Wolves allowed them to work the ball into the box, and Kuna, the assist maker from earlier turned goal scorer now, gave Wolves a 2-1 lead. And frustratingly, that was the last real chance of the game, a game we dominated for large periods, but one we just couldn't quite take our chances for, and it means that we kick off this brand new Southampton career mode with a loss on the opening day of the season. However, from losing 2-1 at home to Wolves, we then go to the City of Manchester Stadium in arguably our toughest game of the season, and we go and beat them 3-2, courtesy of 2 goals from Onyenachu and an Aribo goal sandwiched in between. However, the madness continues as what seems like a relatively routine Carabao Cup second round game against Luton ends up going to penalties, and we end up throwing away that competition as well, losing the shootout and being dumped out of the cup by the championship team. For now though, it's time for our final game of this episode, and what a game to finish on. We are back at home, but this time to Liverpool, and I think we're going to have to hope for the same stroke of good fortune that we had against City if we want to get anything out of this game today. And we almost got that slice of luck 14 minutes in, with Dooku and Onyenachu combining again, but the striker could only strike the post as a huge opportunity goes begging. And less than 10 minutes later, Djenepo had another great chance after some great work from Sulemana and Yilmaz down the left-hand side. It was laid on a plate for him, but Alisson denied him from close range. However, our continued pressure in the opening 30 minutes of the game finally paid off, as it was a counter-attack. James Ward-Prowse delivered a wonderful through ball to Sulemana, who drove at lightning speed into the Liverpool box and finished with aplomb, powering a strike past Alisson and getting his first goal in a Southampton shirt, one that Adrian DG was absolutely delighted with. That goal finally kicked Liverpool into gear though, and they almost equalised only a few minutes later, with Bazunu forced into a smart stop from point-blank range after a Diaz shot. Djenepo had the chance to get his first and our second of the game just moments before half-time, but once again we were denied by the outstretched arms of Alisson, and literally seconds later, Onyenachu could have and should have made it 2-0, but he decided to strike the ball straight at Alisson from close range when it was easier to score. Liverpool started the second half in much better form though, with Mo Salah firing a good free kick just wide, but more wonderful build-up play from us inside of Liverpool's half, with neat, intricate passing allowed us to ghost into the Liverpool box, and James Ward-Prowse unselfishly laid the ball into Onyenachu's path, and this time he made no mistake, sticking the ball in the back of the net to give us a deserved but highly unlikely 2-0 lead. And I don't really know what on earth was happening with Liverpool, because aside from one or two half chances, they were barely able to carve any opportunities out whatsoever. In fact, it was us who came closest to adding a third 5 minutes from time, with Che Adams bundling his way into the box, only to fire a strike straight at Alisson. However, that did not matter, as we ended up holding out for the remainder of the game to give us a huge 2-0 win at home to Liverpool, a real shot in the arm after getting knocked out of the Carabao Cup. Losses to Wolves and Luton, followed up by wins to City and Liverpool. I think that's just a quick insight into how much of a rollercoaster this season is shaping up to be. And so with 3 games played, 2 against the toughest opposition in the league, we somehow find ourselves 4th in the Premier League with 6 points to our name. A lot to be happy about, but of course there is a long old way to go. And with just a few days left in the transfer window, and with £41 million still left in the transfer budget, the board are insisting that I bring in one crucial player to the squad. Let me know down in the comments who you'd like to see playing at Southampton this season, and watch out for episode 2, where we'll be continuing Southampton's journey to the top of the Premier League. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you again next time.